Cool.
Welcome everyone. Oh, nice little call there, Henry. I'll keep that one in. Welcome everyone to In the Slot podcast. Um, we we reviewed everything after last week. We thought we'd give it a little bit of a shake up, change things around, keep it a bit more fresh. And obviously, it's kind of at the perfect time because right now it's crunch time in the fantasy season. You may be sat there knowing you're going into the playoffs. You may be sat there knowing you're eliminated, or like Chris, you may be in the middle of a battle to claim one of the last remaining spots. So it's always an interesting time of the year. Obviously, the NFL season as a whole still going. We're just getting into the swing of things, knowing roughly where teams sit. So it's a really interesting time. Let's look.
Just to add to that point, for all the fans who are currently listening, they would like to hear that their two podcast hosts, Henry and Connor, myself, have clinched their wildcard positions.
Yeah, I'm sure they will be celebrating ecstatically right now. And what you probably didn't realize, but the inference was there. Obviously, Chris is in the middle of a battle for a last remaining playoff spot. He's a David in that scenario. Definitely a couple of Goliaths sat ahead of him, so slim chances, but still better than mine, which are almost none. So thank you, Connor. Yeah, obviously, Connor Henry doing well. Chris, so-so. Me, not well, which is why we've got the podcast. At least it gives me something to look forward to. And being a Seahawks fan, at least I have something to look forward to in the real NFL, Connor.
Yeah, no, I can't say
Early Cowboys dig, love that.
Yeah. How about them boys?
Yeah, not this season, mate. But let's talk about last week. Let's look at the booms and the busts. Connor, as you started off in such a chirpy mood, why don't you take us away with your booms and busts of the week? Anyone particularly that stood out for you for fantasy?
To follow on from last week's, I know we didn't post it, so people will not be aware of our trade debacle that took place last week. And I think for us, I don't think it was an issue, but for certain people on this podcast, it was a major issue of shouts of collusion. But for me, 2 weeks running, I think it's 2 weeks running, Ronald Jones this week. I know we all spoke about it earlier, did not perform. So he's for me a bust, especially on the back of our trade, but then also for us to keep that trade in motion. The other side of that trade, which was T. Higgins, was also a bust. So a trade within our league that has shown to be a big disappointment in the week after the trade.
Yeah, thanks,
but they
Connor.
Performed when we needed it, didn't they, Connor?
Exactly.
They got us the wins last week.
They got us the win last week.
It did the job.
It led to a 0.15 defeat over our co-host, Josh.
Yep, thank you for that.
No problem, fans need to know.
Yeah, they definitely cared. Ronald Jones and the other member of that trade was Rob Gronkowski, who also had a stinker of a week. Let's not forget about that.
He did.
He was the reason why we were talking about collusion, because somehow the trade was agreed that Rob Gronkowski would magically appear back on the trading team the week later. So don't take too much away from it. Henry, any booms or busts for you this week in particular?
Yeah, there's one guy that we've been waiting to have a game like this all season is Deshaun Watson, with a huge game, excellent performance, really efficient, and a good win over the Patriots. So something we'll touch on later on in the pod in my segment, what to do with Deshaun Watson, how good is he really? But this week he showed the high end, and that is seriously high, fantastic performance, accurate, dynamic player. And another player that I really enjoy watching is Keenan Allen. 16 receptions this week. Unreal game. Probably one of the most underrated receivers in the game. I don't think you consider him right up there at the top with some of the other receivers. Probably bigger, more explosive receivers, but unbelievable player. And then on the busts, I had Brady. Tough loss to a very good Rams defense, but a really poor fantasy output, and obviously 2 picks as well. Not a prime game for him.
Yeah, exactly. And Keenan Allen obviously benefited because Justin Herbert similarly had a great week from a fantasy quarterback perspective. Chris, anyone who stood out particularly for you this week from a boom or a bust side of things?
A couple of booms already been mentioned. Deshaun Watson against a very tough New England defense. Justin Herbert keeps getting it done. Now looks set to become rookie of the year, offensive rookie, I should say. Keenan Allen also had written down for his monster target. You have to shout out a couple of big catches. Adam Thielen and CD Lamb, absolutely fantastic one-handed grabs. Take a look at those back on the highlights if you've not seen them. And then a couple of busts. I had Rojo in there. I had Tua in there, Tua Tagovailoa of the Miami Dolphins. Only 83 passing yards. Obviously got benched for coaching reasons. Brian Flores has come out and said. But he has been named the starter for next week. Matthew Stafford also disappointing, but he had no weapons. No DeAndre Swift, no Kenny Golladay. But he scored 0 points. A very, very disappointing week for those who started Stafford.
Yeah, definitely. And really good point about Justin Herbert. Obviously now prime contention for the offensive rookie of the year. But the real reason for that, obviously a massive loser this week, a bust in some senses due to his injury, was Joe Burrow. Obviously exited his season's already over. So that was a shame. It was interesting to watch him, wasn't it, Henry? He had a great rookie year.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. I've loved watching Joe Burrow. We'll talk about him a bit later on, but such high hopes for his career. Fantastic attitude, all the right intangibles, and also arm strength, intelligence, accuracy, all of those things you look for. I think the Bengals absolutely got that pick right. And I was really, really disappointed to see him go down, both for him, personally. Really hope he comes back strong from this, but also just because it's been great to watch him this season. I think it underlines how important it is that the Bengals spend this offseason and probably the offseason after building that offensive line. That needs to be their top priority. So really hope to see him back strong next season.
Yeah, and you'd probably think now, given the Bengals' likely record as a result of Burrow going down, they probably are in a good position to pick up some of the premier offensive line talent within the draft. Obviously, we'll touch on that in later pods, I'm sure, but we already talked about Penei Sewell in our own one. Great offensive line talent. Let's see if he keeps it up and turns into what some of the offensive line talent from last year's draft has already done. Just a couple of other booms and busts from my side. Obviously, Demary Bird had a brilliant game, put up about 20 points from the receiver spot. And we also had Wayne Gallman, who's been continuing to demonstrate that he is capable, as we thought he was last year within the Giants backfield, also putting up about 20. Christian Kirk, we highlighted him last week as a boom, and DeAndre Hopkins was the loser slightly in that scenario, but still a boom. Neither of them were booms this week. Both were busts on the week. But that kind of leads us on to our next section, Henry, which you were going to take us through, and we've already alluded to it throughout the pod thus far. Take us through our quarterback rankings.
That's right. So this week, we're going to take a look at all starting quarterbacks in the NFL. So I asked everyone to have a think about where they would rank the quarterbacks. So who's elite, who's unquestioned, who can get you to and win a Super Bowl. That's the real question you have to ask when you're evaluating a quarterback, I think. That's really the line in the sand where you have to decide if you're happy or not, because that has to be the goal for every team. So we've all had to think about these. I'm really interested to hear some of the thoughts and to see who separates out the quarterbacks a bit differently. So Chris, I know you had a couple in particular that you'd be interested to talk about, but where do you draw the line for you in terms of who or which quarterbacks can actually win you a Super Bowl?
Well, I think we've mentioned it before. You have to have a good combination of offensive coach and a general team spirit, and you have to have a good defense as well. But I think obviously we all know what Pat Mahomes can do. But then you have to raise the question about Lamar Jackson. He's not cut it so far, at least in the playoffs. He's not been successful there at all, despite having a really good defense and a really good head coach in what they've got there at Baltimore. So I'll be interested to hear what you guys have to say about Lamar Jackson. I really, as a Steelers fan, I'm always up and down on Big Ben. He's probably going to be a Hall of Famer for what he's done, the passing records, the yards, and things like that. And Mike Tomlin, fantastic coach, fantastic defense as well. But he's very inconsistent, Big Ben. He has big games and he has little games. But I just don't know when we would draft a new quarterback. Obviously, we had the AB fallout. And then we obviously decided probably the right choice there to go with Big Ben as your quarterback. But I just don't know. None of our backups are any good at all. So from a Steelers fan, where do we go from Big Ben? I just don't know where to go.
Yeah, and a great point about Big Ben, Chris. You know, for me, that's exactly where I see the line. I see a clear distinction between your top 13 quarterbacks, at which Big Ben is my number 13, Matt Ryan is my number 14, and I see that as the line where in reality you've got yourself a Super Bowl caliber quarterback or you don't. Not to be harsh, obviously Matt Ryan's been there before. I think, you know, there's always elements which could play against it, but if I was a GM in that spot, I'd be looking to change the position.
Yeah, interesting, Josh. I mean, somewhere there will be a line. You both sort of touched on an interesting point there. Do you think there's such a thing as a quarterback that can be really successful in the regular season, but come playoffs isn't good enough? Because it seems like Lamar and Big Ben are almost reverses of each other. Big Ben in the playoffs, unreal. Like, can always step up, can take a hit, can throw under pressure. Lamar yet to win a playoff game. What are your thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, it's an interesting point. You know, it's one which goes down to personality more than anything, and that's something different than talent. Obviously, that element of it is a bit harder for us to judge ourselves. We usually only see that in games, and only few quarterbacks have that opportunity to demonstrate they can win them. I think it takes a lot with close games in the middle of a season to show what the postseason talent of a quarterback is, but I definitely do think there is a line there and a distinction somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. What do you think on that, Connor? Is there a quarterback in mind where you think they're not quite good enough to win you a Super Bowl?
No, but I was just thinking to the point that you were just saying there about quarterbacks who can do it, and it's actually what Chris was slightly touching upon with the Lamar Jackson comment as well, is that and where his difference is between Jackson and Mahomes, and what it seems to be at the moment is that it is something that we have discussed, but Mahomes has that aura to him. He has that superstar element that just isn't seeming to go. It's the confidence that's way up above the confidence that is proven to show that Jackson hasn't had this season. And there's like, and this might be a very harsh statement on Lamar Jackson, but it is showing that to be at that superstar level, like we're seeing with the Ronaldos of the world, like we're seeing with the Mahomes of the world, LeBron James is to stay at that high level, you've got to do it consistently without wavering. And it might be that Jackson's going through a tough season, but what we did see of him last year was making it there, being as good as he was last season, and then not perform when they needed to in that final stage. So I think that's one point. And then one of the other things that you said, like just like looking back in time as well, I think it's a consistent thing with a lot of quarterbacks. And being a Cowboys fan myself, you've got to look at the likes of a Tony Romo, who was an amazing quarterback but didn't get himself a Super Bowl.
Yeah, and ultimately that's how quarterbacks are going to be judged, isn't it? That's always the thing that's going to come back to is how many Super Bowls do you win? Did you win a Super Bowl? Not many. You're not going to see many quarterbacks in the Hall of Fame that haven't won a Super Bowl, just purely because of how influential they are. So it's not the first time we've made the Mahomes LeBron James comparison. In my view, right now there are three truly elite, transcendent talents and quarterbacks in the league. And my definition of that is that they raise your team to a level that regardless of what is around them, you're going to be contending for a Super Bowl. My three are Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and Russell Wilson. They're my three currently. How does that compare to yours, Josh?
Yeah, I mean, I've actually extended the gap one more. I've got four that I view in that sort of category, but it's worth noting I view Patrick Mahomes in his own elite tier.
I'm fully with you there, Josh.
Yeah,
fully with you there.
I think, if you were going to draft any player in the NFL, you were going to take any GM across the league, everyone would choose Patrick Mahomes. And if they wouldn't say that, then I'm sure that's because they've got another invested interest to say it elsewhere. But I do view Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers within that elite tier, that they changed the team. The other one is Kyler Murray. I think we've not necessarily seen enough from him yet to justify it completely, but I think he changes the dynamic of the Cardinals team to such a great extent that I'm already prepared to put him there as number 4 in my list.
Wow, brilliant. How does that compare to yours, Connor? What are your thoughts on that? Are you sold on Kyler in that tier?
Yeah, I think this might also lead us into the next conversation point on this, but like to what Kyler Murray's doing with that team, yes, he's performing as one of the best quarterbacks at the moment, doing some absolutely amazing things for his team. But then what you've got to bring in there is that Dak Prescott was doing something very similar with the Cowboys, but the back end of the Cowboys was not the same outcome. That wasn't having the same ripple effects that we're seeing with some of the other teams, like what you're saying about the Wilsons, the Mahomes, the Murrays, where the whole team seems to be transformed either side of the ball. And that wasn't the same with the Cowboys with that same effect where the offense was completely popping off, but the defense was not on the same wavelength or high level of motivation.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Chris, I'll ask you a tricky question. Who would you rather have next 5 years, Kyler Murray or Josh Allen?
Kyler Murray.
Easy decision.
I know Josh Allen can run, but I just love the way Murray moves. He's so quick. His feet are so fast. And I think he normally, we haven't seen him have that much of a cannon compared to Josh Allen. But obviously we all saw the nuke fantastic Hail Mary throw that he did. But I just think if I'm an offensive player or if I'm a fan in the stadium, I'm going to get more excited seeing Kyler Murray do what he can do compared to Josh Allen. He just doesn't excite me. Fantastic talent, huge arm. Obviously can do it on the ground. Loves to get the touchdown within the sort of red zone. But Kyler Murray just excites. He's more exciting to watch.
Yeah, he's so unique, isn't he? And I can't. It's unreal every time you watch him run how fast his feet move. It's absolutely ridiculous. Okay, interesting. So we've sort of touched on how important a quarterback is, and I think we all accept that is, that's ultimately what's going to decide your fate to a large extent. What do you think? So a lot of the quarterbacks we've mentioned here have really good supporting casts. They have smart head coaches, smart GMs who probably drafted them. That's partly why they're smart. Do you think we see the flip side of that with Deshaun Watson? Or do you think he is a little bit overrated? Because I see that some people putting him in the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. I saw a poll recently that put him second behind Mahomes. Are we overrating him there? Is he overrated in general? Or is he just the victim of a shambolic setup led by Bill O'Brien in Houston? What do you reckon, Josh?
Yeah, the struggles you'll always have with Deshaun Watson start with his draft position, same as Lamar Jackson. When you're taken lower in the first round, then you're always going to be a polarizing quarterback. People want to pick you as their underdog, outside dark horse bet. I do think he struggles within the Texans team, but I do think he makes it difficult for himself. A strong leader in that locker room would not have let Bill O'Brien polarize DeAndre Hopkins to the point where he's been traded away from the team for practically nothing. I think if you look at a team where a quarterback genuinely has the leadership capabilities, I wouldn't categorize Deshaun Watson as having strong enough leadership capabilities. I wouldn't categorize many quarterbacks as having that. Certainly, as a Seahawks fan, I wouldn't categorize Russell Wilson as having those leadership qualities. He's a generational player. He's the elite talent. You want to build your team around Russell Wilson. But I don't think he could have ever stopped Richard Sherman or someone as opinionated as that having the fallout which he did. So it's not a slight on Deshaun Watson, but for me, he's number 6, Deshaun Watson. I still view him as a top tier talent, someone you want to build around, but that's my biggest knock on him.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. Connor, if you were sort of looking at taking a head coaching job in the NFL, would having Deshaun Watson appeal to you a lot? Where does he sort of sit for you?
The thing with him is he's got that really exciting element to him still, and that's the one thing that makes it a difficult conversation, and that's why we're having the conversation, is because he's not just a bad quarterback, and he's not by any means a horrible player or anything like that. And I do feel like there's an essence of unluckiness around him. So I think for me, he would always have to be an option into the team you have. It's just what you can provide. It's what you can provide around him, because we are seeing it, and I'm taking this to a slightly different point as well. But we're seeing the very same thing with Carson Wentz at the moment, where we've seen him squirm out of situations, and we've seen him make these amazing plays like Russell Wilson-esque, where he's been able to escape and make big plays and on more irregular occasions. But at the moment, his O-line is letting him down. And that's the same situation that Deshaun Watson's getting a little bit as well. He's getting let down in a couple of places.
I'm glad you brought up Wentz, Connor. Good points there, and I'm interested. Let's move on. Let's slide down the tiers of NFL quarterbacks, and we'll see how far we go. Josh made an interesting claim in one of our WhatsApp groups earlier this week that he felt at the start of the season, he did clarify this, at the start of the season, he felt that Wentz would have been considered a top 15 quarterback. What do you reckon now, Josh? Top 15?
He's actually rated as 27 on my list.
That's much more accurate, I feel. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
I think it was just to give the disclaimer about the statement. It was more about where franchises saw him.
The general perception.
Exactly. Yeah. Connor talked about it, and it's all about potential. The NFL, just like everything, is about upside. Right now, they draft athletes, not football players, and they convert them into that. It's still seen all the way through college. Coaches aren't seen as being talented enough to coach them into the NFL players at that point. Or just football players, and they more start off as athletes and go on that way. Obviously, quarterback is one of the most interesting spots because you've got to coach and upskill to such an extent. Someone who came from a second-tier college team like Carson Wentz did is such an uphill battle there. All of the intangibles exist, but he just hasn't put it together yet.
Okay. Chris, what I'd love to get your opinion. What would you do if you're the Eagles right now? So you've got Wentz, had quite a bit of previous success, taking number 2 overall. You've got Jalen Hurts, who you've just drafted in the second round, high in the second round. What would you be thinking at this point? Really, only because of a dreadful division, are you still alive this season? What's your next move?
Yeah, well, we all know how bad that division has been for all 4 of the teams. They've all been very underwhelming, very poor indeed. Carson Wentz, he was tipped to have a really good season. Obviously, Jalen Reagor injured. A couple of other injuries there affected their receiving core. Zach Ertz has been very poor. Their O-line has been poor. They've all been poor, just generally poor. So if you have very bad play throughout the team, you have to ask the question, is it the coaching scheme? Is it the quarterback? Is it just they've had enough of the coach? Maybe he's just really not been very good. As of next year, I think they stick with him. I know they drafted Hurts, and he's had a few snaps here and there in the league, but he's not been given an opportunity. Obviously, there's a lot of pressure on Carson Wentz, and he's been questioned in the sort of media this week about who is the starter, and he has confirmed it is Wentz. I think next year they still stick with him.
Okay, interesting. I think there's a real reason they drafted Hurts. And I know a backup quarterback is a valuable position, but as a Packers fan, I was actually hoping we got Hurts in the second round. That was my hope going into the draft. I really do like him. I think that change happens probably this season. And then we see what happens going into the off season. Okay, one that we've touched on, and Connor as a Cowboys fan has mentioned Dak Prescott. Obviously a difficult decision when you combine someone who's trying to prove themselves in a contract year in particular, and then gets a significant and horrific injury like he did. Josh, what do you think about Dak and where he ranks, perhaps like when healthy, and then what would you do now as the Cowboys GM?
Yeah, good point. And historically for me, I've never been that high on Dak Prescott, so it takes a lot. And when I was doing the rankings, I realized I was going over performance so far this season, and because Dak got injured so early, it was then a question of where do I fit him in. I've gone for 0.7, 7th best quarterback in the league for me, based
quite
on
high then.
true talent.
Okay.
So yeah, I would say quite high. He's in my tier of players that you can build a playoff caliber, Super Bowl caliber team easily around. He's just one spot above Lamar Jackson, who I'm sure we'll touch on later as well. Chris already mentioned him, but it's a tough spot for the Cowboys. I think if you're the GM, you probably capitalize on his injury. He's definitely not going to get anywhere near the guaranteed money he was looking for as a result. But he's also probably going to get slightly more overall as a value of the contract than he would have done otherwise, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. So I've got a tier of quarterbacks where they've all got severe limitations for one reason or another. It might be accuracy, could be age, arm strength, mobility, various different reasons. Could you see the Colts winning the Super Bowl with Philip Rivers? Just give me a yes, no. What do you think, Connor?
No.
No, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely not.
Really? And you're of all of us, you are probably the highest on the Colts, are you? I know you.
Yeah,
you have backed them.
I think the Colts are a brilliant team. Defensively, they're really the best in the NFL. I'm confident of that. Obviously, them and the Steelers really up there, but just Philip Rivers, when it matters, I would not pick him in any scenario.
Okay, yeah, I mean, good point about the Colts defense. I think Matt Eberflus, I think you pronounce it, Eberflus, their defensive coordinator, starting to be tipped for head coaching roles as well. Chris, Philip Rivers, Super Bowl, will it ever happen?
I can't see it personally, but I made the comment earlier on the Ravens D and the Steelers D. If you have that good a defense on one half of the play, then you've always got a shot. Michael Pittman Jr. looks exciting. Jonathan Taylor or Naheem Hines or Jordan Wilkins seem to get it done behind a really good offensive line. So a chance, but he's not the quarterback that I would automatically pick as a Super Bowl champ.
Okay, great. Right, we'll move on to one of the final sections, which is the younger quarterbacks. Where do we rank them? We've already talked a bit about Joe Burrow today. How much has Burrow proved to you already? For me, he is in the same tier that I currently have Josh Allen, Deshaun Watson, and Kyler Murray. He's that good for me. He's in that tier already. He's proved it. Do you agree with that, Connor, or do you think that's a bit early to put him up that high?
No, I really enjoyed him this season, and I was even being an outsider perspective, never been someone who's particularly followed the Bengals, have been really enjoying watching him play and watching him put together what he has, and just seeing someone come into the league and just with that breath of fresh air to that team that was struggling so much before. So I don't think it's too much to say to put him in that sort of like category, but also at the moment it is also very early doors to be saying something like that for someone who played 9-10 games. Yeah. But at the same time, he's played 9-10 games, and not once did we see any reason to not say these things. It's just now we've got to wait over a year to see him continue to do that, and how will he then recover after an ACL injury?
Yeah. How would you, if you were thinking as the Bengals now with him injured, are you happy you took him one overall, do you think, Josh? Would you go for Herbert, even with his new trim looking fresh? Would you go Herbert, or would you go Burrow?
No, it's an interesting point. I've got one which I'd like us to revisit later about quarterback personalities. I think Joe Burrow is a great player, a consummate professional. He's shown he's got the talent. I do think his confidence is something which could be an issue, which is why for me he's ranked number 11 currently. I don't necessarily think he's not self-confident. I just think he's been in a very fortunate position. You're taken by the worst team in the league. He's actually a bit better than they are. They're not winning. No one's putting any pressure on them to win. Everyone's enjoyed watching you play, so no one really cares. It's been a fun offense with good wide receivers. Joe Mixon's been in and out, and Gio Bernard's mixed in as well. So overall, there's not that much from an expectation perspective, and he's definitely prospered in that scenario. The reason why he's not in that same tier just yet for me is because we haven't seen the reverse of that. I haven't seen how he deals with adversity. Big one will be coming back from this injury, but even bigger we'll be seeing how he deals when the fans start to get on his back. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I love Burrow's attitude so far. I think there's definitely some arrogance there, some serious arrogance, I imagine. But like Burrow on and off the field, I think in terms of social activism and just generally seems like a cool guy. if we're thinking about young quarterbacks drafted in the last couple of years, so you can think about Daniel Jones, Darnold, Herbert, Tua. Who would you pick out of that bunch apart from Burrow, Chris? Have you got anyone in particular that you like drafted in the last, say, 2-3 years, something like that?
I think recency bias tends to get to all of us. So Herbert is the one that stands out. To be honest, no, not really. There's nothing that jumps out at me immediately. Like I said, recency bias. Herbert is the big name. Obviously, Burrows as well. But I don't think Tua has been as electric as he would have hoped. Whether the hip injury he sustained has slowed him down. Obviously, all the hype was tanked for Tua, and obviously Burrow and Herbert came through at the end. So no, I don't think so.
Yeah, for me, probably I would view Herbert as one of the top ones, but I think he benefited significantly the same way Mahomes did with the Chiefs, and I view them from a personality perspective as very similar. Connor talked about Mahomes' supreme confidence, which is one of his biggest traits, but that came from a place of winning, doing well, being successful early, which Herbert's benefited from as well. I think in a very different team, we could be viewing Herbert the same way we view Carson Wentz right now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Would you take Herbert over Tua now, Josh?
As a coach, I think you have to.
Interesting.
Okay, cool. I just don't see enough of a spark from Tua. Yeah, really good session looking at the quarterbacks. Obviously, we can continue that discussion as we move forwards. But now we've got our first of Connor's segments where he's going to take us through a fun little game that he's devised.
Stoked for this.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, and I must caveat straight away, this is a rip-off off a rip-off. So we're going deep into rip-off territory here, but I thought we'd go for it. Let's try and play a little podcast game that gets all of us involved here, get our league involved, and gets everyone else playing along as well. So the idea behind this game, just to give you the complete background to it, in the initial thing I'm ripping it off from is Rockbusters, 90s to 2000s TV show. No, sorry, not Rockbusters, Blockbusters. Rockbusters is the second rip-off, which I need to talk about. So Blockbusters is, famous TV show in the UK. And there's a segment which was ripped off on another podcast I used to listen to, and I won't name names. But the idea of this game is for me to give a quote that describes someone that we know within the NFL community. It's a cryptic clue. And it will be a series of words that kind of brings that person together, and I'll take answers next week. I don't want any answers now, but we can go through it a couple of times, and there will be a prize for the first person to guess it correctly in the YouTube comments. So it's not going to be anything special. I guarantee you it's not going to be anything special, but for the fun of playing, there will be a prize, and I will send it out by post. So,
do we know what the prize is? It's just the prize.
It's a secret.
The prize.
Moment.
It's Connor's PS5 that he's got.
I'll find out what the prize is next Wednesday when we refilm next week's podcast. Whatever's closest to me on my desk. But basically, this week I'll start with what I think is an easier one. And then from there, we can start breaking it down. If it was too easy, then we can start doing some more harder ones as we go ahead. But just to get us started. So has everyone got the idea of the game we're going to play in? So this is the first time I've described it to our co-hosts as well. Chris, go ahead.
So do you want us to guess on the pod or no?
No, you can probably from this just tell me if you think you know it. Or if you've got an idea, or if you're confused, or if anything like that, but you're only getting one clue. I'm not giving you any other information about it. And then from there, you can kind of go away and come back and let me know next week, along with anyone else who has commented on it in the week.
Okay, sounds good.
Is it Anquan Bowling by any chance?
It is not. Funnily enough, that is a part of our unwritten history of the podcast.
They'll never
the
know.
missing episode.
Yeah.
It's in the archive somewhere else. But okay, so Yeah, like I said, I think this is an easy one for this week, but I'll go ahead and give you the clue. So here we go. I'm famous for Greek mythology, but boy, do I need painkillers. And I'll say that clue one more time. I'm famous for Greek mythology, but boy, do I need painkillers. I will repeat at the end of the pod when we get there, but I don't want answers from anyone right now. And it's one for everyone to think about, and we'll come back to the answer of it next week.
Okay, thanks, Connor. Yeah, you got no clue at this stage. It's not an anagram, is it? It's a cryptic clue.
It's a cryptic clue.
All right. Well, we look forward to seeing Joe and anyone else comment on YouTube. Shout out to our one fan, and however many of you out there that we don't know about, please comment so we can list your names in future episodes. Yeah, exactly. Well, whilst we're all thinking about that, Chris, take us through something which we know a bit more about at this stage: COVID.
Thanks, Josh. Yep, interesting there, Connor. Interesting. I'm racking my brains. We'll see what happens. Back to COVID. So the big news today is that the Thursday night game, the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers, has been postponed now to Sunday due to ongoing outbreaks of COVID positive tests. So just looking around the league's reporters, the Ravens have had 4 staff and 7 players test positive in the last sort of 3 to 4 days. So that's 10 players in a week. 2 of those are J.K. Dobbins, who obviously had a good week, and Mark Ingram, another running back there. A lot of Steelers players unhappy that it's been moved. We've seen the Packers play on a short week. We've seen 49ers play that game as well. But we have seen way early in the season, one of the Patriots games was moved, I believe. So obviously Steelers players not happy there. Minnesota Vikings superstar Adam Thielen, he was added as a close contact initially, but he has since had both positive and negative tests. So we'll wait to see what happens there. Obviously, it would be a popular start in most fantasy leagues moving forward on a weekly basis. Looking at the Browns, massed loads and loads of sacks this week just gone, even without pass rusher Myles Garrett, and he's going to be out another week. There was another Browns player that tested positive in the testing from yesterday or today. So the Browns have closed their facility as a temporary measure. Jacksonville Jaguars, the entire defensive staff is isolating, but hopefully most of those can be back by the weekend. Safety Eddie Jackson is on the Bears list, so that might be something to look out for in the Chicago Pack game. 49ers added a couple of players, and the Buffalo Bills activated cornerback Josh Norman, so hopefully that'll be a boost for their secondary. One little thing, the NFLPA, they've released another statement, just meaning there's going to be less players allowed to travel. Play callers on the sidelines must wear a mask now, as well as a visor. And there's going to be aims and hopes to limit the post-match interaction between the two sides. So we're probably going to expect to see more face masks on the sidelines, which is probably a good thing with the increase in cases, certainly in the US, the UK, and worldwide.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And yeah, nice to see the NFL changing their rules. Sorry, Henry, what were you going to say?
I think the Jags defense has been self-isolating all season, haven't they, Chris?
Yeah, but not for COVID reasons, Henry. So they'll get used to that one. Oh, just before we move on to anything else, let's take a look at our favorite division within the NFL, the NFC least, as we so call it, the NFC East. Obviously, historically poor division. Do you know how many other divisions within the NFL bottom place team could be the division winner there? I can see you all looking it up, so you've ruined the element. But Connor, seeing as how you look like the slowest to Google, guess for me.
2.
Yeah, he's Googled it.
Yeah. I've actually not Googled it.
Oh, well done. Congratulations. I apologize.
Got halfway through the word division.
Yeah. Oh, all right. Slow typer. Yeah, it's the NFC West. It's the NFC West and the NFC North. All 4 of their teams within those divisions would be winning the NFC East. How many divisions from the others remaining would place their last place team as joint second within the division, only losing by a tiebreaker. Chris.
It's two again.
It is two again. You looked that one up, right? It's the AFC West and the NFC South. I mean, come on. What sort of statistic is that, Henry? How does that make you feel about football as a whole? That the Philadelphia Eagles or one of those teams will be going into the playoffs?
I think this division is seriously pushing the boundaries of who we can let into the playoffs. We had this debate on our other pod actually about what should there be certain minimum requirements to actually make the playoffs, and we quite like the division structure in our fantasy league to allow for that extra debate. I don't know if we've ever seen a full division as bad as this, so it's really hard to see one of these teams going to the playoffs. The difficulty is that one team, for the benefit of one team, they're going to play them in the first round of the playoffs and have seemingly a very easy game, particularly with potentially no crowds. The bad side for that team is they're going to be potentially maybe 4-12, 5-11, and yet not have a high draft pick either. So it could potentially be really tough for whoever actually wins that division. But yeah, pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable in the playoffs for sure.
Yeah, it could be a lose-lose-lose scenario for fans, that team, and any team which plays them and has a risk of losing as a result. They're one week away from guaranteeing that they can't finish above 500. All of those teams. So that will be interesting to see, because at that point it would guarantee that as well. Okay, yeah, just interesting to look at whilst we're thinking about around the league. The other interesting thing, obviously, we had two new starters this week at quarterback. PJ Walker playing for the Carolina Panthers, and Taysom Hill started for the Saints. The biggest thing is the discrepancy in the salary of both of those players, entered in different routes. Taysom Hill's been a mainstay within the league for his gadget plays and his overall functionality within a team. He managed to secure himself a $21 million 2-year deal with $16 million guaranteed to stay as the Saints' backup quarterback this season and next year. Whereas PJ Walker, on a 2-year salary, having done amazingly in the XFL, almost certainly would have been the MVP of the XFL if it wasn't cut short, and he's earning $1.565 million over a 2-year window. Henry, what are your thoughts about the two? Obviously, they both had pretty good games in reality.
They did, yeah. Both really exciting players. I'm a big PJ Walker fan. Watched a bit of him in the XFL, thought he looked fantastic, and I'm really pleased he's getting his chance in the NFL. I think if he keeps going and performing at this level, he will not have to be worrying about money or salary for too much longer. I think he's shown he can play in the league, and now the decision is, can he win a starting job? I certainly think he's got the potential to be a backup, particularly on a team that runs read option or a team that utilizes a quarterback's athleticism well. Yeah, Taysom Hill's such an interesting one. As a Packers fan, I saw him tear up some pre-seasons and things like that as a member of the Packers. It'll be interesting. He's going to have every chance to be the Saints starting quarterback in the next probably 2 years. Drew Brees now with another severe injury probably doesn't have that much longer left. So I'm not sold on Taysom Hill as a starting quarterback, but it's certainly interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, and it's almost good. You know, it actually shows a route which we've not necessarily had. The NFL, the way that it works, because that division stands by itself, it's obviously fed through from the college football system. We have seen occasionally the Canadian Football League send a few players here and there to the NFL. But now with the XFL taking part in a different period of the year, when it gives those players a bit more of an opportunity to highlight their talents and then move on as PJ Walker's done. Connor, are you looking forward to seeing more players do what PJ Walker's done, carve out a role within the NFL on the back of a good XFL campaign?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting as well, because it changes a couple of the aspects to the one route in. Because that's one of the things that is also so great about the NFL as well, is the supreme talent that kind of comes in through the draft process of having to play in college, which we don't see in other countries. We don't see it with English football in the same sort of way. Or not English football, but just all other football. So it is a nice additional route to get into playing. And then I think also the other side of it, to what you were saying about the salaries, is that I think for a lot of the players will be a key motivator to, he'll happily take 1.6 million to come and play in the NFL if that means he can then prove his point when he gets the chance to play, to say, you need to be giving me what that backup QB is getting at least, and I'm going to prove why I should be earning this money. And to be fair, it could end up that you see some great players come out as a part of it.
Yeah, exactly. And, he's benefited. I mean, he was, in some senses, very unlucky that we didn't have preseason this year, Chris. But through this game that Teddy Bridgewater missed out on, PJ Walker was able to demonstrate he is an NFL talent. So with preseason and the XFL, do you see that as a more entertaining route for the league as a whole?
Yeah, certainly. I think we're all pleasantly surprised and quite pleased for him to have demonstrated what he can do. And just as you mentioned there, it's another possible route for perhaps those players that do go undrafted. They are missed. We do know there's talents like Philip Lindsay, like James Robinson, that do get missed. So it could be another option, particularly if there's going to be some sort of COVID lingering situation where there's less players or there's more stricter testing and players don't make it, more practice needed. It's definitely the missed preseason for a lot of rookies and a lot of new players on rosters affected their integration with the play schemes and their familiarity and their ability to train and getting with a bunch of guys and stuff. So it's definitely really, really pleasing to see. It was interesting from my perspective. I know a lot of DJ Moore, and DJ Moore has been up and down. He seems to be fairly happy to target all three of the wide receivers there. Robbie Anderson, I think he had 9 or 10 targets. Curtis Samuel had 10 or 11. DJ Moore also had 10 and 11. So he would definitely look fairly competent. And we've already mentioned some of the other quarterbacks. So if he continues to play well, if he doesn't oust Teddy Bridgewater, there's definitely other places he could perform.
Yeah, great. And it's good to see someone who's obviously missed a chance previously, being a backup player on a roster, come in, have the confidence to actually do that in what could be one of his last shots. But yeah, thanks guys. Let's look ahead for next week. Anyone have any particular running backs, wide receivers that stand out for them for the fantasy week ahead? Connor?
I just want to make one point on standout players for the week ahead. And as the league's tight end advocate, I would like to highlight that as of this week's receiving rankings, Travis Kelce is the 3rd highest receiving player in the NFL. So I think for me, that's obviously really exciting because tight ends are up there as one of my favorite positions. Obviously got him in both my fantasy teams. And for me, he's the one that stands out for this week, and let's see, like we've mentioned previously today, that coming up against that strong Bucs defense, I want to see that continue. So that's a little bit of a tangent to what you were saying, but that's a highlight for me.
Yeah, I'm pleased. You kept us on the edge of our seat whilst you really painstakingly brought that out. I'm just pleased you didn't mention a kicker, Connor. Chris, bring us back to running backs and wide receivers.
I'm going to go with Michael Pittman Jr. of the Indianapolis Colts. He's starting to look really, really good. And the Colts have got a very soft few matchups coming up. So playing the Titans, being quite point friendly to the wide receivers. So I think, although we've touched on, not a massive fan of Philip Rivers, he's fairly average. But Michael Pittman starting to look really exciting.
Great, thanks. Henry, anyone who stands out to you particularly?
Yeah, I've got a couple. I think Chris's point there, we just watched Pittman roast the Packers. It's definitely, you can see the talent there. It looks like the most talented receiver on that team. Titans might have a Dory Jackson back, I think. Might help struggling defense. We'll see. I'm just going to pick Terry McLaurin every week until he gets recognized about how good he is, because he's just unbelievable. For me, he's in that top tier. He's Pro Bowl. He's as good as the best. And he's got the Cowboys this week. So what could be better? I think he'll have a huge game. My other one is a bit rogue, and I did claim earlier in the season that I would never pick up a Giants running back for fantasy, but Wayne Goldman looks really good. coming off a bye as well. I think he'll have a really nice game against the Bengals. I think the Giants probably are quite heavily favoured for that game now. Goldman looks way more explosive than previous years, and I think he'll have a nice game.
Yeah, definitely. Finally, someone who's taken advantage of those touches he's getting. Chris, take us through our NFL picks. I understand we've got a change in the leaderboard. Connor is now bottom. Is that true?
I can confirm that is very true. So big congratulations to Josh. He's now 16 correct from 36. He's lifted himself off the bottom.
Don't say it like that.
Connor has replaced him with 15 correct picks out of a 36. So woeful.
It's a real shame.
So far.
If the results had gone my way, it would be completely different.
Correct. But this week, Connor, you got 0 out of 4.
That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, very
on the unreleased pod from last week, I did win a competition by getting 0 when the rest of you got negative.
Well,
points.
unfortunately, this one doesn't.
That one doesn't work like this. Yeah.
That was the reason why you didn't put it on YouTube, wasn't it, Connor? So you didn't have to advertise that fact, which you've now disclosed to everyone.
We'll find out if this one now makes it to YouTube.
Anyway, so Henry, he scored 2 on the week as the top scorer, which is a bit of a low week. He has now got 20 out of 36. I'm plodding along still in the league. I got 1 this week to match Josh's, and I've got 23 out of 36. So Henry's catching up.
Am I right in thinking, Chris, that we're now as a league, or as the 4 of us, we're exactly 500? I think that's right, isn't it? Check the math.
So as a total,
if you add up all of our results, we're exactly as though we've picked the games randomly.
I
haven't done that.
of NFL picks.
Yeah.
I will let you know next week.
Okay.
Or on the chat. Week 12. It was the Thursday night football game. It was Ravens 6-4 at Steelers 10-0. I'm still going to keep it despite the move to Sunday. I'm going to come straight to Josh here because Henry looks like he's struggling. I'm going to come to Josh. What do you reckon? Stevens? The Ravens or the Steelers?
I'll go for the Steelers. No. God, yeah. I feel the same way as Henry. It's a good defense against a good defense with a quarterback who hasn't done something, but I believe he could, but maybe he won't. I will go for the Steelers.
The Steelers. Connor, give Henry a bit more time.
I think that it's a quarterback. And again, I said this last week. I've said it the week before. He's got something to prove, and this is the time to prove it. So I'm going to go Ravens.
Nice, big divisional game. Obviously, we beat them in the first divisional matchup, so I'm going to go with Steelers again, obviously. And this one is at Heinz Field, so you'll know that Big Ben plays better at Heinz Field normally. Henry, what do you reckon? Have you decided?
Yeah, you do always pick the best games, but I think this one was always going to be picked. I'm going to take the Ravens. I think this will be really close. I think a field goal. But I'm just going to take the Ravens on this occasion. I think it's time the Steelers' undefeated season ends.
I think it's coming. So who knows? Next game is Washington, our lovely NFC East team, 3-7 at Connor's Cowboys, 3-7. Want to come to you, Connor?
Yeah, it's the Thanksgiving game, and it's the Cowboys' time to shine. They've got it on Thanksgiving.
Well, Zeke's been playing well. He's actually been given the ball, which is good. Andy Dalton didn't look too bad.
Henry, and how can you argue? You mentioned it earlier. How can you argue with the CD catch? That was insane.
It was big. But Terry McLaurin, Henry's number 1. What do you reckon?
Yeah, really, really tough one to pick, actually. I was originally going to say Washington. I think I'm actually going to switch and take the Cowboys. So I'll take the Cowboys. I think Dalton always struggles in prime time, but I'll take them on this occasion.
Josh?
Yeah, definitely no thanks have been given for this Thursday's matches. Texans, Lions, football team, Cowboys. What is this? That's awful.
I don't know. Yeah, it's not nice.
Yeah, pick your poison. Yeah, I'm gonna go with the football team. Chase Young looked really good on Sunday. Really good. I love him, and yeah, Terry McLaurin always puts up some good thoughts as well.
Yeah, I've gone with you. I've gone with Washington. Antonio Gibson, another good week, finding the end zone as well. So hopefully against a very porous Cowboys defense, hopefully he can score again. Carolina Panthers 4-7 at the Minnesota Vikings 4-6. Josh, straight back to you.
I will take the Vikings.
Okay, Connor.
I'll also go for the Vikings for this game.
Henry.
I'm going to go for the Panthers. I'm going to back PJ Walker, as we talked about. But I have to say, Josh has made a couple of predictions over the last few weeks. One was the Vikings as a very dark horse, or as I described, a completely different kind of animal, to make the playoffs. And so far, I think they've won 2 weeks in a row since you made that pick, Josh. So I have to give you some credit for that.
Yeah, and I saw, I can't remember to give them the credit, but I saw when I was trying to load up Red Zone one week and it wasn't working properly, as it seems to be doing a lot lately. So there's a lot of shade there for the NFL Game Pass for you. But whilst I was loading it up, I saw a rerun of a show where someone else picked the Vikings as their dark horse. But that was after I made my prediction. So they've obviously been listening to the pod since Connor's been uploading it to YouTube.
The one time he has. I'm going to go Vikings. I don't think you can look past Dalvin Cook. He's now, I think, in most formats, the number one running back after Taysom Hill seemed to take all of Alvin Kamara's productivity there in New Orleans. So I've gone the Vikings as well. The last game, I had to put them in there. It's the New York Giants, 3-7 at the Bengals, 2-7-1. Obviously, we talked about the Joe Burrow injury. Henry, are you going where I think you're going?
Well, I was ready to say, yeah, Chiefs, but I'm looking forward to Bucks and Chiefs. And then you pulled out Bengals and Giants. So I will take the Giants, but you definitely threw me a curveball there.
Josh?
Yeah, I thought it was for sure going to be the Bears versus the Packers or the Chiefs versus the Bucks. Yeah. Somehow you brought out two gutter games for us. Thank you for that, Chris. It's always nice to be reminded that these games actually do go on in the NFL. I will also be picking the Giants. And for a bonus point, all right, I bet this week is the week that the Jets finally win a game.
Oh, wow.
Against the Dolphins.
Oh, you really?
Really?
If that happens, I will give you a bonus point.
Yeah.
If that happens.
Connor's looking salty over there. Maybe you've got to give him a bonus point if the Dolphins win. I don't know.
I'll take the Dolphins.
Connor, what do you reckon on the Giants Bengals?
Yeah, Giants for sure.
Yeah, all four of us for the Giants. No, interesting. I felt a little bit undecided on this week's matchup. I changed that last one a few times. The main reason for including that one there is the Joe Burrow injury. How significantly is that going to impact on the Bengals? I think also, just throwing this out there, I don't know if anyone had seen this earlier, it seems as though Gio Bernard has sustained a concussion today, but I don't know much more than that. I've just seen a tweet about that. So maybe that also swings it in the Giants' favour.
Yeah, if you're the Bengals, surely you're full tank mode now anyway, as we discussed earlier. But it'll be interesting to see that Chiefs-Bucks game. Obviously, Henry, you talked about that's definitely one of the big games to look ahead to this week in the NFL. It's going to be a big statement win for the Chiefs, who obviously had that initial stutter and now looking much better as a team. Thanks very much for joining us this week, guys. Oh, Connor, sorry, you were going to drop us in. I completely forgot. You were going to drop us our cryptic question, weren't you?
Yes. So just to leave you on the note, as I appreciate the quiz was halfway through, or I don't think I gave you guys the name of the game show for us, did I?
You didn't. You definitely didn't.
I kept you on the edge of your seats just for that. And you are welcome, because we are at the end of the podcast. And I can now reveal that the name of the game that we are playing, which is Blockbusters, rip-off of Rockbusters. This is in the Slotbusters. And our cryptic clue for this week is, I'm famous for Greek mythology, but boy, do I need painkillers. So I'll leave you on that one, and we'll get the results in and any answers, and we will reveal. I'll get the other 3 hosts of the podcast to reveal their guesses, if they have any, during next week's pod. And then if we don't have any correct answers, I'll reveal the answer and give the cryptic clue for the week ahead.